Good evening and welcome into Trailblazers Courtside here at the Moda Center. Jordan Kent, Michael Holton, and head coach Terry Stotts. Coach, thank you so much for taking some time to join us on the program.
It's always a pleasure.
Well, we appreciate it. And before we get to the X's and O's and whatnot, Michael and I have been talking a lot about the All-Star game coming up and players that little kids are looking up to now. I'm curious, when you were playing, when you were starting to learn this game, what were some of the players that you really idolized, or who did you look up to when you look back?
The first one was Jerry West. So I was born in 1957. Jerry West came in the league in 1960. So when I was 10, 12, 14 years old, Jerry West was the man. So he was the first guy that I really looked up to. When I grew a little bit, I really admired Rick Barry and what he did on the court. I thought he was somebody that I tried to emulate as well.
Michael, what about you?
Wow, Coach, I was thinking, he's the logo. Coach watching the logo. Dr. J for me. I remember going to an ABA game and seeing Dr. J, and I didn't think that the marquee player that you saw on television really showed up when you played. I couldn't believe that I saw Dr. J play live, so I guess he was my guy.
Yeah, good stuff. Obviously, All-Star game coming up. But before that, Coach, you guys close out the road trip with the victory over Boston, especially late in that game. What stood out to you the most about your team as far as some things on the defensive end, getting some key stops as well?
Well, it was just good to close out a game. And, I heard you talking earlier about our defense, and, that's something that's always a concern. But when I look at the previous two games against Charlotte, where we only scored 13 points in the fourth quarter, against Philadelphia, we shot 27% for the entire second half. So we're an offensive team. I was glad that we were able to make the offensive plays that we need to make in addition to the defensive plays.
And when you look at those offensive plays, is it more so when you get a chance like Dame and CJ making an exceptional play, or what is it about getting the offense into a flow and a rhythm late in those games to get those quality looks?
One of the tough things about fourth quarter offense is fatigue sometimes comes into it, obviously. Sometimes it does become more of a half-court game, and so getting flow and getting easy baskets, oftentimes it becomes more of a possession game, playing against set defense. So balancing, you kind of, first three quarters you're just kind of playing, and then now you're playing for the game, and like it or not, I think sometimes there's a shift there that changes the dynamics of the offensive end.
And I'm curious because from our perspective, we sometimes hear people say, you got to attack the rim, try to get to the foul line. How much is that something you guys focus on, or is there a lot of truth to that in the fourth quarter, trying to get to the foul line and put pressure on defenses?
I hear all that, and I'm a believer in you take what the game gives you. If it were easy to get to the rim, everybody would get to the rim. If you want to get to the rim and get foul calls, now you're hoping the officials call the foul. What could be an aggressive play could be a bad play because the referee doesn't blow the whistle. So my thing is, if you're open, shoot the ball. If it's a good three, shoot the three. If it's a good mid-range, shoot the mid-range. If you can get to the basket, get to the basket. But if you try and predetermine what you want to do, I think that's a distraction. I think that, and a lot of times it's not in the best interest, because the guys on the other side are trying to keep you from the rim. And it's, like I said, it's not that easy. It's not easy to get, whether it's fourth quarter or you look at playoff games, it's hard to get good shots. And so I'm in the mindset, if Damian Lillard is open at 15 feet, I want him to shoot the ball. I don't want guys hesitating like, I shouldn't shoot this, I need to go to the rim. That's not how the game's played. You got to take what the game gives you.
And you talk about going to the rim and not hesitating to shoot, and we saw a lot of evidence in that with Myers Leonard and his performance off the bench. You see how strong he finished at the rim a couple of times. Are those examples of what you're looking for from your guys when they get an opportunity to make a play like that, they go and make it?
Those two plays from Myers, this one here, he's rolling to the basket, he takes it to the rim. The next one, same thing. It's AC turns the corner, flips it. Go to the rim. You're at the rim, go to the rim. But just like in the second half, he had his threes, and he needs to take those. Pump faking and turning down a shot kind of deflates your team as well. So again, in those two instances, he took what the game gives him.
Coach, when you talk about taking what the defense gives offensively and playing off of one another, whether if Myers rolls, somebody else pops in that vacuum. I think teams develop those levels of chemistry just as the season goes on. On the other end of the ball, defensively, what are the keys to developing chemistry to close out games on that end?
Communicate. I think it all starts with communication. And it comes with experience. And I think the more experience you become, it becomes more of a second nature to you. I think we're at the stage with a young team that communication becomes that much more important because it's not a given that players are going to be in the right spots or see what's coming. So no matter fourth quarter or whatever it is, the communication is the most important thing. Then now you can talk to game plans and things like that and strategies. But when you're communicating, a lot of that takes care of whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, we'll definitely address some of that communication. We're going to take a break right now, but stick around when we come back. We'll have more with head coach Terry Stotts. And obviously you think of Jack Ramsey when that comes to mind. And Coach, 3 years ago, you donned the infamous jacket that was an exceptional fashion statement, in my opinion. Question, do you still have the jacket?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
You can answer this if you want. Will it make a cameo?
That
That is clean right there. So is that tailored right there also? Is that?
I tell you what, it's not necessarily. It was altered because.
Okay, sure.
I didn't buy it off the rack.
Now, the collar too is the best part. I think the collar to go with that's
nice
terrific.
right there. That's nice.
That's a good look. 40th anniversary of this team on Wednesday. Any talk at all about the jacket making a comeback?
I will not be wearing that jacket.
Good stuff. Well, don't forget, we'll do celebrations that night against the Lakers.
I want to know, you showed that picture. I want to know, as part of this reunion, if the two guys that are standing on the basket, if we're going to bring those guys back.
I think we should.
Hey, we have time.
Pre-game?
Somebody needs to track those guys.
Pre-game for warm-up? Absolutely. I'm sure they probably didn't wander too far from Portland. Probably 1977 never ended for them. So prior to the break, Coach, you talked about communication on defense and how it was important for this team to communicate. Can you fill us in on what some of those things they need to communicate are, as far as giving us perspective to hear what you might want to hear on the court?
Well, in transition, coming down, who has the ball? You got two guys. I got this guy. You take him. I got him. Just communicating who has who has whom, if you want to get.
Sure.
Pick and roll coverages. Which way is the screen coming? Screen coming left. Screen coming right. What coverage are we in? A blue? Are we in a black? Are we gonna blitz it? Whatever that is, so that the guy on the ball who is trying to guard the ball knows what's going on behind him. Weak side, if you're fronting the post, when you communicate that you're fronting the post, that means the guy on the ball is going to pressure the ball. That means the guys on the weak side know that there needs to be help on the weak side. If somebody flashes, we got to have somebody at the nail. All those there are a lot of things that can, when it's communicated, it becomes that much easier. And as I mentioned, since we're a younger team, it doesn't come natural every possession, and they're not always where they're supposed to be. But when you communicate, it helps everybody be where they're supposed to be and hopefully alleviate certain problem areas.
Coach, there's a term that I hear a lot, analytics, and it's relatively new, I think, to the game.
The word is statistics. We always call them statistics. Now it's analytics.
No, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because every time I hear it, I'm going, I think I know what that means. Yeah. And I'm glad you put that perspective, because I was like, is it new or is it something that has been relabeled? But I get the feeling that the data seems to be more utilized on the defensive end philosophically, or than it is on the offensive end. Is that an accurate or inaccurate statement, or?
Well, to be honest, I would say it's probably more geared towards the offense. Certainly, you can track defensive stats, but I think it's difficult to track defensive stats when you don't necessarily know what teams are trying to do X and O's wise. Let's say a guy, you're in the middle of the court and we're sending the guy to his left. So you send him to his left all the time, and then all of a sudden the stats say, well, this guy likes to go left. Well, he's going left because teams are sending him left, which is an offensive stat, but it's really a defensive stat. I think now they're using the sports view to say whether a shot is contested. Well, it's not a true contest, because what they're seeing is there a player within a certain amount of distance between the shooter and that defender? Well, if there's 3 feet, then it's a contested shot. Well, as a coach, I'm saying, well, just because he's there, that doesn't make it a contested shot. So I think it's difficult to quantify defensive stats or defensive analytics. I mean, offense, you got shot charts, where it's being taken, time of the game. Baseball, just like baseball, there's so many offensive stats. What he hits with a full count, or what. So I think it's much more easy to quantify the offensive stats than defensive stats.
Coach, I'm so glad. That's refreshing to me. I've been wanting for a couple of years to figure out how to ask you that question, so I can check that off my bucket list. Because when I'm watching the Blazers play and I'm seeing the energy and the effort, and I'm seeing them get to the point of the screen, I'm seeing them talk, I'm seeing them communicate, I'm seeing them stay connected. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, that's basketball. That's just basketball. And I'm glad to know it's not an analytic-driven thing. It's trying to figure out how to stop it.
No, and we have analytics for what players do in pick and rolls, and who's a better pick and roll defender. Now, again, it kind of gets skewed a little bit, because if they say this team doesn't do as well when this guy is defending the ball screen per se, but they're better when he is not in the ball screen. So, but is that an indictment of him, or is it an indictment of the 3 players who are behind him covering up whatever pick and roll coverage they're in? So I just think it's hard to make that end all and be all as far as someone, whether they're good or bad. I don't think in those situations the eye test is much more important than what the analytics say about those situations. Now, I do take into account, I think there are a lot of analytics, a lot of stats that are very valuable that we do take into account throughout the course of either a game or a season.
And Coach, during this road trip, we saw a change in the starting lineup. Evan Turner, Noah Vonleh going into the starting lineup. What were your impressions from them when you had a couple games to do that?
Well, obviously they both, they played well. The group itself played well. The primary reason for changing the starting lineup was nothing against Mo or Farouk, because really our starting lineup has not been the problem. Obviously we had a couple games where we got off to slow starts, but for the last 2 months of last season and this season, when Mo and Farouk have been the starters, that the starting lineup has been very positive. The reasoning was really to kind of change the rotation a little bit, maybe get some more. When you bring Mo and Chief off the bench, you're adding some a little bit more pop maybe, or more experience. Noah's a young player, so he's giving him minutes in the starting lineup makes it his job but maybe a little bit easier. Changing up who plays with whom throughout the course of the game. So that was the reasoning. It wasn't anything against Mo or Farouk, and it was more just like, we lost 4 in a row, and we got to do something.
Sure. And are those conversations then that happen amongst the coaching staff? Is that something you communicate to the team? How do you guys, I guess, disseminate that information with? Well,
first of all, I don't ever want to. Once the decision's made, I took Mo and Farouk aside and told them that I was going to make this decision, and they were fine. They understood, and I think the most important thing is whoever is, I don't want to say slighted, but whoever is being taken out of the lineup, they need to hear it from me rather than just hearing through the grapevine. I think it's important that communication, so that they understand the reasoning behind it and where we're going from here.
And Coach, this is our first chance we've had to chat with you since CJ's really took off in the month of January and had that stretch run of games. And I'm curious, you see him obviously very often during the season. Where do you think he's improved the most this year, to where we've really seen him elevate his level of play beyond even what he did last year?
Well, he made the big jump last year, and I think what he's doing this year compared to last year has been a little bit more incremental. It's not the big jump, obviously. He's playing like a guy who's been doing it for a while. I think last year was really good for confidence. I would say more than anything else, he has He just seems like he's playing with a confidence, and he's not rushing. He kind of knows where his spots are. He knows when he can go get his shots, what the team needs. And as I mentioned last year, the best thing that he did last year, everybody looks at how his scoring improved and increased, but the fact that he was essentially our backup point guard and how he handled those backup point guard duties was really important to the team's success, and he's followed that up this year.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because he has to run the point in Dame's absence during that run. And what does he have to do then to kind of balance, as you talked about? You don't ever want to predicate what you're doing on offense, but have you been impressed with just his improved decision making, it seems like, this year, as far as when to dish it? Because there's a play in the Boston game where it seemed like he could have forced a jumper, but he finds Plumlee for the pass right there and finish. Is that what you're looking for as far as?
I'm looking for good decision making from point guard. I mean, you played point guard. That is the most important thing. And being a scoring point guard, the decision making is even more difficult, because if you're out there and your job is to run the team and get guys shots, you know that's what you're doing. But if you have the responsibility of scoring and getting your shots, and at the same time running the offense, and at the same time getting the other people involved, that adds to the decision making. And it's a tightrope to walk, because you are counted on to score, but you are counted on, otherwise you don't want the other four guys just watching you play. So it is a balance. I try and help them out with play calls so that it allows them to be more of a facilitator or other people be involved, but at the same time I think one of the things that scorers in general know that, if you run the play, 24 seconds is a relatively long time. So early in the clock, you can kind of move around. And so what Dame and CJ have to know is when to look for their shot early in the clock and when to in the middle of the clock, and see how the play goes.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's a delicate balance for a scoring point guard.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for taking time to join us. Certainly appreciate it. Best of luck against the Lakers.
Wasn't too long, was it?
It wasn't too long at all, Mike.
You got another question?
No.